Hey guys! If you haven't been following me already, let me bring you up to speed. I'm a huge Sanderson fan and I'm super excited for Stormlight 5 to come out in December, Winds and Truth. So to prepare myself, I am rereading the first 4 books before December so I can catch myself up on details that I've forgotten and just be all hyped up and ready. This is the first time I've reread any of the Stormlight books, so I'm really enjoying it so far, very excited. Last month I read The Way of Kings, this month I am dedicating to Words of Radiance, and then October will be for Oathbringer and November will be for Rhythm of War. The prologue already started off so good, so intense. We were following Yasna on the night that Gavilar died. It was so good and I'm really excited to keep going. I remember loving Words of Radiance the first time I read it, so I'm pretty sure I'll love it this time too. So see you when I finish part 1. I think I forgot to mention this in the last vlog clip, so just in case, I just wanted to point out that one of the things that I love so much about this book is this artwork on the end pages. Like, I don't know why, but this particular piece, just every time I catch a glimpse of it, I just like am drawn to staring at it. Like, I just think it's so stunning, and I love just this moment of Shallan that's been captured. And I think this actually it's funny because I didn't realize how many people found Shallan annoying until I started like listening to other booktubers talk about her, and I was like, I didn't think she was annoying. I thought she was cool. I mean, like, she has some mental issues, that's for sure, and I mean, and I didn't like some of the decisions she made in Rhythm of War, to be fair, but at this point in this series, and even in Oathbringer, I was like, Shallan's cool. Why does everybody hate on Shallan? And I think part of the reason why I think I was so like cool with her in the beginning, not that I'm not cool with her now, but I kind of understand better now why people don't like her as much. But before, when I was like, why? I think I was heavily influenced by this art piece and just how beautiful it is, and I was just like, oh, Shallan, she's so cool. I don't know. But I just think that piece is really stunning, and I love the moment it captures. Anyway, I finished part 1, and I feel like this vlog is not only like a journey through my rereading of the Stormlight Archive, but it's also a journey through my sleep deprivation. Because I am so tired, and it took me an embarrassing long time to finish part 1, because it's really hard to get any reading done at night because I'm so tired when I wake up to feed my baby. It's a journey. It's a good journey, but man, some days are just, it's just rough. It's fine, and I am still having a really good time reading Stormlight. I love that we're starting to get to know Pattern again. Pattern is one of my favorite spren, and he's just so funny in the way that he doesn't understand humans and is trying to understand them, and it's different from Syl's very kind of like innocent childlike nature. Like, Pattern feels more like an alien who is kind of like ignorant and not like ignorant, just ignorant because he doesn't understand humans yet, but he comes across as like very intelligent, but he's also just like, he just doesn't get humans. And it's really funny. So Pattern is just a joy and a delight. It's really cool seeing how Shallan is really still working through, okay, so I kind of forgot that in the beginning Shallan was so timid, and that she's really been working on building up her confidence through book 1 and through this part of book 2. And because I think by the time we get to like book 3 and 4, she is a lot more confident, and she really, I mean, in some ways. in other ways, like, she's less confident in herself and being herself, but she's really working on her confidence and acting like she can just take charge of a situation even when she feels like, who am I to really do these things. And it's cool seeing her just try it anyway, and risking looking like a fool, and it really works out. And I think it's a testament to the fact that most people aren't thinking of you as harshly as you think of yourself. Most of the time you think, oh, somebody's probably noticing this about me, somebody probably thinks this about me, and in reality they're probably thinking about themselves and how they're insecure, rather than thinking about, you know, X, Y, and Z about you. Another thing that I appreciate about part 1 is that Bridge 4 has expanded so much now, because there's really like all the bridgemen who are being trained as soldiers and hopefully being trained to be bodyguards for Dalinar. And I really like that the transition isn't seamless. It's not like these bridgemen were freed and they're like, oh cool, we're part of Bridge 4 now, life is good, and we're now just suddenly awesome fighters who can, like, no, that's not how it happens. Like, some of them obviously are like, wow, I could be part of Bridge 4, and they are enthusiastic and excited. There's a small number of those, right? But there's also a lot of people who are just like, they still feel like they're dead inside, because that was such a harrowing experience that they went through being in these bridge crews, and they don't really necessarily have any reason to trust that they're in a better position now, or that things will really get much better, besides the fact that they're not charging into death every other day. So I really like that it's showing that like Kaladin is really struggling to figure out, okay, how do I get everybody on board? How do I keep this transformation of these men going on a much larger scale? And I think it's just done realistically and taken some time, which is natural. And I like that that Kaladin is putting like serious thought into, how do I help all of these men now? It's not just my original crew. And again, that goes back to just his character that I talked about in the first book, where he's welcoming everybody. Like he really wants to protect everybody, and that's just part of what makes him so good. The interludes were fantastic. I enjoyed them so much. Of course, it's really fun. So we get 2 interludes from Ashonai this time, the Parshendi, and not Parshendi, she's a listener, that's what she's called. And it's so fun just seeing such a very different culture. And I love how like Sanderson just has so many different cultures that are just so different from anything I've even like learned about in our world, right? Not that I'm an expert on like world cultures, but like I feel like I know enough that I know that a lot of this is just like very fantastical. Like the fact that the listeners can all like hear this music, and they can all attune to different songs, and they just never miss a beat. Like it's such a unique thing, and I love that about the world building. It's so fantastical, so different. And part of me is like, wow, how do you think up this stuff and make it so cool? You know? Also, like the Reshi culture, the people who live on these moving islands, and the islands are actually these great shells, like giant creatures that are just walking around in the water, and even that whole landscape of like these incredibly tall trees peeking out of the ocean. Like, this planet is so diverse, with like high storms on one side, and the pure lake, and this crazy kind of ocean, like all these different places. Like it's so diverse, and these people are so diverse. And I also really loved, I mean, I loved all the interludes in this one, but the Reshi one, the peek into their culture, very, very cool. And I've got to say, I think the interludes are so much more enjoyable when you're reading the series all like consecutively, like quickly, rather than having these 2-year gaps in between as books are published, because you're able to retain so much more information and connect so many more dots. And like, because I remember the interlude from book 1 with Risen, who is, you know, training to be a trader, and she goes to trade with the Shin, and I remember like the details of like how she thought the Shin were strange in this way, and the things she's trying to learn about how she perceives the world and the things her Babsk is trying to like teach her and show her. And then switching now to book 2, I don't know why I was showing this as like book 1 because it wasn't book 1. We'll pretend. But now in book 2, now it's book 2. Now she's seen a very different culture and she's still having to learn to see them as like a valid culture and learn to deal with them and I wouldn't have appreciated how she's like perceiving the Reshi if I hadn't remembered so clearly how she saw the Shin in the previous book and all the things that she was learning back then. Also, man, the moment when she falls, if you remember, this is the moment when she shatters her legs and she's not gonna be able to walk again after this. She's gonna be wheelchair bound, and it's like a heartbreaking moment, but also so cool how I just remember really in future books and in Dawn Shard as well, just loving to see how somebody who is paralyzed is represented in a story and just getting to know that kind of experience more. Another thing that Sanderson is really pretty good at doing is representing a lot of different kinds of people with different backgrounds and different experiences. And that's one really cool thing that is coming through in Rizen's arc, and it's very satisfying seeing like it all strung together more closely instead of like forgetting what happened in the first part because it was 4 years ago that I read it or something. So really loving that part of this reread experience, that like the interludes are just so much more satisfying because like everything's clicking better. So I would suggest to somebody who doesn't want to reread the whole series that if you want to still like feel caught up and ready for book 5, I would suggest like, I mean, obviously looking up summaries of some of like the main things that happen, just like, you know, give yourself a brief review. But also if you have like a copy of the books or can get a copy, read just all the interludes and just skip everything else. Like read, and probably read all the prologues too, like read the prologues and the interludes and just get all of that, those like extra little details, because then you'll have the overview of like the main story that you could probably remember better anyway because it's the main story. And then I think you'll feel really prepared to actually dive into book 5 and feel confident that you're not gonna miss a ton of Easter eggs and details, and you'll just understand better how things connect. That's what I would recommend if you don't want to actually reread the whole series, but I would actually still recommend just rereading it because it's so good. It's so good. Hopefully I'll get a little bit more sleep and get through part 2 a little bit faster, but it's still a good ride and I'm excited to keep going. Okay, I got my baby here by me because she is wide awake and pretty happy actually, so you're probably gonna hear her like grunting and cooing throughout this little clip. It should be adorable, hopefully. Not distracting. Okay, so I finished part 3, surprise, surprise. When I was reading part 2, I was actually sick. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna like power through this and just keep going and we're just gonna get to part 3. So now we're recapping part 2 and part 3. One thing that is super fun is that finally Shallan is with all the other characters, and also because of the way that book 1 turned out, Kaladin is now, you know, bodyguard for Dalinar and his family, and so we've now that Shallan has gone to the war camps in, I think it was at the end of part 2 when she finally like got there. And so now part 3, all of our main characters are actually together and interacting together, and it's really fun to see like, you know, all these people who we've been following for the most part separately, and now like it's all really coming together and really fun to see them interacting. And probably the biggest thing about part 2 is I don't know if I've always had trouble loving Shallan's little arc here where she's like studying to become a con artist with Tin. I think I always just, it just kind of like hurts me that like Tin thinks that she's like literally trying to con people. But but it's really satisfying when you realize that Shallan is really just picking up some useful skills so that she can really just spy is really what she's going for. And the moment when she is writing with the Ghost Bloods and they think that she's Tin, and she writes just at the very end like, yes, I'll meet with you. Like that's a great moment where you're like, oh my goodness, things are getting crazy. And what's really interesting now, having a little bit of perspective on the Cosmere as a whole, like when I first got introduced to the Ghost Bloods, I was like, oh, they're a really like shady group. They're really like, I don't think I like them. They're pretty brutal and too quick to like hurt people and kill people. And now I've seen the Ghost Bloods in Mistborn as well. And I'm kind of like, well, that lot is really cool, and they're like a great group, and they're not like super mean and sketchy. Like they're secretive, sure, but they're not like the Ghost Bloods in Stormlight, where he's like, my minions might just kill you because you know what they look like now. I feel like now that I'm seeing a little bit of the bigger picture, I'm like, there is so much more to the Ghost Bloods than I know right now, because I'm guessing, well, obviously this group, I'm seeing them probably in like different times throughout the Cosmere, and I'm just like, you know, there could be different factions, there could be different priorities at different times. Anyway, it's just really interesting having a little bit of a different perspective on the Ghost Bloods now, and kind of wondering like, okay, where is this all really gonna go? Like, how is it all gonna tie together? It's very interesting. What I've really been loving about part 3 is everything. But it's really fun to see Shallan and Adolin together. Oh my goodness, just the way that she actually captures his interest, like for real, it's great. And I really do love their dynamic. They're a fun couple, I think. And it's hilarious watching Kaladin be so like moody in the background and be like, oh, I'm annoyed that they're happy. I don't know, it's just funny. It's been interesting just seeing that Kaladin, like, he's seen in himself and also all his other bridgemen that they kind of miss the bridges, which sounds crazy, but they just miss that thing that identified them. They miss having something so difficult to work through that gave them so much purpose, but at the same time, like, life is so much better for them. And I think it is actually something very true to human nature, where you get through something really rough and you're like, oh, that was hard. But then you look back and you're like, and you do remember the good parts of it. Like I do this all the time with like remembering college. Like college was busy, really busy, especially because I had my first baby at the end of it, and like that was a really hard semester where I was working, I was in school, I was a first-time mom, and I was not getting a full night's sleep. I don't think I got a full night's sleep once that whole semester, and it was hard. It was so hard to balance everything, and I was tired, but at the same time, I look back at it so fondly, and I think that was such a good time. Like, I loved that time. But I think there were many moments in that time where I was like, I can't wait to graduate. Here's the thing about part 3. I forgot a lot about this book, actually. I thought I remembered it a lot better than I actually do. So it turns out the only thing that I really remembered clearly about this book was, first of all, the scene where Shallan dunks herself to get a look at the Xanthid. I remembered the I am a stick scene. I remembered a little bit of Shallan and Adolin flirting. And then I remembered the very end when Shallan and Kaladin get stuck in that high storm. And then the very, very end when Seth gets his fancy new sword. But that's like it. That's all I really remembered clearly from this book. I totally forgot that Adolin, he's, you know, going along with his duels, and he sets up this duel where he's gonna, you know, duel 2 shard bearers, and then he ends up having to duel 4 at once. I totally forgot about that scene. And it was so fun to reread it and relive this and have so much suspense. And it's so funny because the whole time I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this happened. And oh my gosh, like I can't remember what's gonna happen next. And then I would get far enough along that I was like, oh yeah, I can tell. Kaladin is gonna come help him. Okay, I'm waiting for the moment. Oh yes, yes, here he goes, you know, like I kept like being like, what's gonna happen? Oh yeah, I remember something like this is gonna happen. Okay, okay. And like it was so intense. And I also totally forgot that this is the scene where Kaladin says, honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do. That was great. That was fantastic. I had naturally also forgotten that Kaladin kind of ruins the king's plans with trying to get back at Sidious, because he's like, well, now I'm also gonna get back at Amaram. And it's so tough because we do know that Kaladin is telling the truth. We know that he really has a right to challenge Amaram, you know? But at the same time, like, Dalinar is so justified in sending Kaladin to prison for what he's done, because from his perspective, like, Kaladin was really insubordinate. And so it's both really satisfying and really, really hard to see this very real consequence to what Kaladin has done. And it's so sad too, because it comes on this like really incredible triumph where like he just helped Adolin take down 4 shard bearers. He didn't really have plate or his own shard blade yet. Oh man, it just it's like so good, and like it hurts so good. That's what it is. Anyway, I'm in the middle of the interludes right now. I'm reading Lift right now. Oh my goodness, what a classic. This is the interlude that is also Edge Dancer. If you read that short story in Arcanum Unbounded, it's great. I think sometimes Lift gets a little bit much and a little bit annoying to me, but it's been long enough since I've read Lift that I'm like, I'm really just finding her very amusing. And I know that Seth's interlude is coming up next, and then Ashonai's, and I can't wait for Seth's. Oh, because here's the thing, in part 2, Kaladin fought off Seth, which was also amazing, like a great scene, and he basically scared him off by showing him his powers, and Seth is like, what? The night you're a Knight Radiant? What? No, they told me I was truthless, and he runs away and he's like devastated. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to follow up with Seth and see what he's been doing this whole time, and how just how devastated he's been. I'm so excited to see what that's gonna be, because I don't remember clearly enough like what he's actually been doing. I'm so excited. And then Ashonai, oh man, it's heartbreaking to see what she's turned into. But it's really good. I remember when I read Rhythm of War the first time, it had been long enough since I'd read like all of these interludes like scattered throughout the first 3 books, that I was like, I don't really remember what's going on with the Parshendi. Like I just didn't remember anything. Like I remembered their culture, the kind of world building stuff, but now it's like, okay, I'm really on board. I'm really like, okay, I know what's happening. I think that's it. Do you have anything to add? What do you think? What do you think of all my reading time while I've been feeding you? What has that been like? Anyway, that's it. I'm gonna finish those interludes and then go on to part 4. I'm so excited. Okay, I have finished part 4. So I finished part 4 yesterday, finished the interludes overnight and this morning, and today's October 1st, so I still have part 5 to go, and I almost finished the whole book in September, which was my goal, but I'm pretty proud of myself for only having about 150 pages left. So there you go. I would have gotten this done sooner, I think, except that Sunday 2 days ago was a really busy day for my family. We had kind of a family celebration day, but it's okay. I've had a great time with part 4. Okay, so you know how in part 3 I totally forgot that Kaladin and Adolin had that duel against the 4 shard bearers, and Renarin too, I guess technically was part of that. I also forgot that after Kaladin was thrown in prison, which I also forgot that happened, you know, but that happened. And then I forgot that Adolin chose to sit in prison with him as long as Kaladin was imprisoned. Like I totally forgot that he did that. And it's really great because Kaladin finally sees just how good Adolin is, which is a great step for him, honestly. But man, Adolin on a reread is just so good. So good. Like because at first, of course, he does come across as a little bit of a prideful, almost kind of shallow, you know, light eyes who's been kind of pampered, and he, you know, thinks he's really good at dueling. I mean, he is really good, but you know, and he just comes across that way at first. And on a reread, and obviously throughout the later books you do really see how good he is, and things come through, but on a reread you see him just from the beginning just having this innate honor to him, and I mean, and he's just like a genuinely good guy. Wow, like, anyway. Adolin has quickly become one of my favorite characters. Just seeing how noble he is and how genuine he is, it's great. The other really fun thing about part 4 is how much Shallan has to do this like subterfuge as she's, you know, completing assignments from the Ghost Bloods and trying to kind of go up in their ranks a little bit and learn what secrets she can. And I just forgot how fun that is, and there's just so much that she can do as she's figuring out her abilities, and I'm very curious how much she's really truly fooling the Ghost Bloods versus how, like, whether they literally don't know what surge binding is and don't realize what she can do, or if they're somewhat aware, because at least some of them are world hoppers, and if they're just like, we've found a surge binder who wants to be part of our ranks, and we're going to kind of slowly initiate her in and kind of pretend like we don't know everything she can do, even though we know what she can do, you know. I wonder if that's what's really going on behind the scenes here. But I don't know yet. Okay, and then like I said before, I remember, of course, Shallan and Kaladin ending up in the chasms and having to try to find their way out and getting caught in that high storm. And I forgot that they fought a chasm fiend though, and that was pretty epic. But I love how Kaladin, when he comes back up and Bridge 4 is like, we knew you'd survive! And Dalinar's like, how did you guys survive? And Kaladin's like, I mean, yeah, we survived, and also here's this gem heart. And he's like just being so dramatic about it. Because it's just kind of in his nature to just kind of be like, mic drop. And Shallan is like, don't be so dramatic. Like, we found the chasm feed already dead, and so we were lucky we were able to get that gem heart out in the first place, and you know, we were lucky we found this and this and this, you know. And Dalinar's like starting to buy it, but then he like looks at Kaladin, and Kaladin's like, yeah, that's what happened. And Dalinar's like, oh, terrible liar. And then it's great, he makes the connection that Kaladin, you're a Knight Radiant, and he's not saying it out so point blank, but Kaladin's like struggling with his bond with Syl because, okay, we're just holding the baby now. He's struggling with his bond with Syl, and that's really sad to see, first of all. Oh my goodness. But I'm excited for Kaladin to make some progress and find the next set of words. Another thing that's really stood out to me in this part, and it's kind of been, I mean, like, it's been all throughout the books so far, but just something that I've been thinking about as I've gotten to part 4 and gotten through it, is that Sanderson is really good at just slipping in all these little moments that are just so relatable and just reflective of the human experience. Like, for example, I think it was early on in part 4. So there's this moment where Shallan is trying to study Yasna's notes, and she's kind of thinking as she's doing this, man, I have so much on my plate. I am working for Siberial, trying to go through his ledgers. I'm trying to make some progress on Yasna's studies that she left behind. I'm trying to infiltrate the Ghost Bloods. I'm trying to court Adolin. And then she kind of has this moment where she's like, I've got all this, it's amazing that I even have time to like sleep. And then she realizes, I haven't really like said a good prayer to the Almighty in a little bit. Like, I've been kind of slacking in my Vorinism duties, kind of my adherence to my religion, practicing it. And she kind of feels guilty and thinking, okay, I've got to figure out a way to just make a little more time for my faith with everything that I've got going on. And man, I've had those moments where I've got like, you know, X, Y, and Z on my plate and it's taken up a lot of time, and then I will have a day where I kind of realize, oof, I've been kind of slacking in practicing my faith and just being as attentive in my prayers or studying my scriptures, like different things that I try to commit to doing and practicing. And it's hard to balance everything, and it just felt like such a relatable moment. Like, yes, sometimes like I kind of fall behind too, and I get out of balance, and I have to try to realign all my responsibilities and figure out how to make room for everything. And it's such a human thing that I think we all go through, that we all have so much that we want to accomplish and do, and it's hard to balance it all. Anyway, I just find moments like that so often throughout this series. And I just find that Sanderson is very good at understanding those human moments that we have and finding just these very natural places to weave them in as he's telling all these stories. That's one of the things that makes his characters feel so real and like there's so much depth to them, you know? And that reminds me that all these hints are being dropped of what Teft is doing in the background, kind of behind the scenes, and it is breaking my heart because I know what's coming, and I just keep saying like, Teft, no. I'm so not ready for that. I'm not ready for that. The interludes this time were also just fantastic. I really loved seeing that the perspective of the Ardent, who works for Queen Aesudan, who is back in Alethkar while Elhokar and everybody else are on the Shattered Plains and the war camps. And she's back in the kingdom and not doing a very good job of being a good ruler. And this Ardent who like takes a stand and is like, things are not right, and she's executed for it. And then the next day riots start. And just, wow, I think, and this is the interlude that made me go, wow, these interludes are so brilliant, because this world truly is so vast and there are so many important politics going on with all these different kingdoms and religions, and you know, the fact that they're all going to try to come together at some point. It's so much going on, and the fact that we are, you know, having our main people to follow, but then once in a while we just get a little snippet of something that's going on in another part of the world, and it just gives us this really great, perfect little overview of like kind of where the world stands, you know. And just, I think these interludes are so well done. So the last interlude was Taravangian, and oh man, I love getting these Taravangian snippets. He's just such a unique character, and it was great to see Seth confront him a little bit and freak him out. It's all just like unfolding in such an epic way, and I'm really excited to get to part 5. This has just been like the best ride. Even though like I know a lot that's coming, I know how a lot of characters, like where they're gonna end up and what they're gonna do, it's still just so like intense and gets so much emotion out of me, even though I'm not like the most emotional reader. Like I don't often portray a lot of emotion while I'm reading. Like I feel it all inside, and it's really such an exciting, thrilling read. It's great. So I'm happy to be here and gonna finish part 5 as soon as I can. It only took me 2 extra days. Maybe you could count 3 because I finished this at 3 in the morning while feeding my baby, but it was basically just 2 days. And I finished it. And it was so good. Oh my goodness, it was so intense. So we covered like the last battle with the Parshendi, the battle as they were summoning their Everstorm, and Kaladin is moping in the palace, healing from his wounds, and then finally says the words while he's protecting the king, and then also flies off to go fight the assassin in white, Seth. And it was also intense. And so much happened. And of course at the same time Shallan is finding the Oath Gate and figures out how to open it and get them to Urithiru just in time to save most people's lives. So crazy. It was just so good. It's a very satisfying ending, and I'd forgotten so much. Like I totally forgot that Seth actually died and then was resurrected by that one herald. he has like 3 names and I can remember one of them, and Nin is one of them. No, Nail. I think we tend to call him Nail most. Anyway. And then he gets Nightblood and I was like, oh, I forgot that he died. But yeah, he was super crazy at the end. Oh, here's like the big thing that I totally forgot. This is so embarrassing. But I must have forgotten so much between reading Words of Radiance for the first time and then reading Oathbringer for the first time. Because I totally forgot that there was actually a whole scene at the end of this book where Adolin actually, he's talking to Sidious and he's like really frustrated, and then he just snaps and kills him right there on the page. And I was like, I forgot that happened. And I forgot that it happened in between reading Words of Radiance and Oathbringer for the first time, which is why I was so confused when I read Oathbringer for the first time, and I was like, so why did Adolin kill him? Like, I can't believe I forgot that much in originally reading the series. Whew. It's a really, really good thing that I'm reading this all together all at once and like filling in the holes and just getting it like it's all sticking much better in my head because I can read it all at once. It's going much better. Not much better as in I'm enjoying it more, but just like for memory's sake, I'm remembering things much better. I also totally forgot that there was a scene at the very end when Yasna comes back. Like I knew she came back, but I didn't remember that we see her on page coming back and meeting up with Wit. And just seeing their relationship there, they're kind of funny together. Also very funny that she's like, there's a storm coming, and he's like, yeah, it's already here. She's like, the Parshendi, the Voidbringers. He's like, yeah, they're already here. And she's like, the Oathgate, and he's like, yeah, your ward already opened it. And she's like, not there. Not really, but it's really funny. But you can also tell that she's had a really crazy, awesome adventure, and it'd be fun someday to get a little book of Yasna's adventures in Shadesmar, what she was doing during Words of Radiance. Anyway, I'm having the best time with this series. It's so epic and it's so powerful how so many of these characters, they step up in the best ways, and they don't just like discover who they are, but they discover who they want to be, and then they become who they want to be, you know? It's really awesome. So many amazing characters and doing incredible, impossible things, and the magic in the world. It's great. It's so awesome. I'm so excited to get into Oathbringer. Is this longer than... Yeah, I think this is longer than any of the books so far. Oh, and I forgot this one has really epic art too. But yeah, 1,200 pages basically, which is a little bit longer than the other 2 so far. I am so excited to dive into this one today, and I'm gonna keep you updated in my next vlog on how Oathbringer goes. Thanks for coming along this ride with me, and I hope that you guys are all getting psyched for Stormlight 5. I think it's gonna be so good. See ya.